She's with the catering. Don't mind her." Kang Tae-yang said it without breaking stride, without turning fully, without any particular cruelty, because men like him didn't need cruelty. Casualness was enough. He steered his guests toward the terrace, and the conversation moved with him, and the room sealed back up around the moment the way expensive rooms always did, smoothly, without a seam, as though nothing worth noting had just occurred. Zara adjusted a glass on the tray she was carrying. She did not look after him. She did not look at the guests who had absorbed his words and moved on. She looked at the tray and she straightened a second glass that didn't need straightening, and then she turned and moved back through the room, and nobody watched her go, which was precisely as it should be. She had 4 hours, maybe less. She needed every minute of them. The Kang estate was full tonight, the kind of gathering that announced its own importance through the quality of its silence, the way the sound of money present long enough to become invisible dampens a room and gives it a particular weight. Guests moved between the main hall and the terrace in the unhurried way of people who had nowhere more significant to be. The flowers were ivory peonies. The stone underfoot was imported. Zara knew this because she had been in an argument about that stone 7 years ago, standing in this same hall when it was still being furnished, telling Tae-yang it was excessive and watching him order it anyway with the pleasant certainty of a man who had never once been told his instincts were wrong. She had been wrong about the stone. It was beautiful. She had never told him that. She moved toward the east side of the room where Tae-yang was now holding court with a cluster of investors, and she kept her expression where she needed it, neutral, present, unintrusive, and she listened to him tell the story of the company. He was good at this. He had always been good at this, which was part of why she had agreed to partner with him in the first place. His voice carried the specific warmth of a man whose sincerity had become indistinguishable from performance, and the guests around him were leaning in, nodding at the right moments, wearing the faces of people who feel fortunate to be near the origin of something significant. She had written the original framework on a Tuesday in Lagos, in a rented office with no air conditioning in the summer of 2017, and in 3 hours of consecutive clarity that she still thought of sometimes as the best 3 hours of her professional life. She had spent 4 months refining it before she brought it to anyone. The hotel room Tae-yang kept referencing, the single idea, the solitary vision, the founding myth he had polished to a high shine, was real. They had both been in it, in Seoul, 18 months after Lagos, finalizing the pitch deck for their first investor round. She had ordered room service. He had complained about the presentation font. She offered champagne to a man on the outer edge of the circle. He took a glass without looking at her. She moved on. It was then that she became aware of being watched, not the ambient, unfocused awareness of a crowded room. And this was specific. She felt it on her left side and tracked it without turning her head, a habit she had developed in boardrooms where she had often been the only woman and had learned to map attention the way you map exits. When she finally allowed herself to look, she found exactly who she expected. Park Soo-jin was standing near the east wall, holding a champagne glass at a particular angle, and her eyes were on Zara with a quality of attention that Zara recognized immediately. Not curiosity, not the mild interest a hostess might take in her serving staff. This was the look of a woman running a private calculation, quiet, contained, showing only in the stillness around her eyes. Zara held her gaze for 1 beat. Soo-jin looked away first. She did it smoothly, redirecting to the woman beside her, and re-entering the room's social current without a visible seam. But the half-second of recovery was there for anyone who knew how to look for it. Zara knew exactly how to look for it. She had spent enough years in rooms where her presence made people recalibrate to recognize the specific quality of someone managing what they know. Soo-jin knew something. How much? Zara wasn't yet sure. She moved on through the gathering, and she did not rush, and she let the room keep believing what it had decided to believe about her. She had time. Not much of it, but enough. If you are watching this and already asking yourself why she didn't say something, why she stood there and let him call her the help and just fix the glasses on that tray, stay with the story, the answer is coming. And when it does, it will reframe everything you just watched. And if this is your first time on this channel, we tell stories about women who play the long game, and we do it every single week. So subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't come in late to the next one. Dinner was announced at 8. The gathering reorganized itself with the practiced ease of people accustomed to formal meals. Guests moving from the main hall into the dining room, finding their places, settling into the particular rhythm of a table where the food is secondary to the performance of being at it. Zara positioned herself near the serving corridor and watched the seating arrangements resolve themselves. The hierarchy of proximity to Tae-yang at the head of the table, and the careful social mathematics of who sat adjacent to whom and what it communicated about standing. Soo-jin sat at the opposite end of the table from her husband. It was not unusual for a formal dinner of this size. Zara noted it anyway. The meal moved through its courses, and Zara moved with it, offering, refilling, stepping back, listening in the spaces between. A business associate of Tae-yang's mentioned a contract renewal with the tone of a man leaving a trail. A cousin discussed a property acquisition in Seongbuk-dong. Tae-yang's mother, 2 chairs from the head, spoke about a charitable board she sat on with the specific energy of someone who understood that philanthropy was a form of architecture rather than generosity. Zara had met her once, years ago, at a dinner not unlike this one. Oh, and the woman had spoken to her for 45 minutes about the company's early financing, without once registering that she was speaking to the person who had originated the concept being financed. She had let that pass, too. Even then, she had understood the value of being underestimated by the right people at the right time. It was during the 3rd course that Soo-jin's attention found her again. This time it lasted longer. Zara was near the far end of the table, and she felt it before she confirmed it. And when she looked up, Soo-jin was watching her with an expression that had shifted from calculation to something closer to the early edge of recognition. Not the full picture, not yet, but the specific unease of a woman who has been living inside a particular version of a story and has just noticed a detail that doesn't fit. Zara held her gaze for a measured moment. Soo-jin looked down at her plate with the careful deliberateness of someone choosing consciously to look away. After dinner, the gathering migrated. Some guests to the terrace, others to the sitting room where the real business of the evening would happen, loosened by food and wine into the candid register that formal meetings couldn't access. Tae-yang moved through it all with the ease of a man in his own kingdom, and Zara watched him from the edges and noted the way he used the room. The touch on the back of a chair when he wanted to make a point without appearing aggressive, the particular rhythm of his speech when he was extracting rather than offering. She had watched this performance across dozens of meetings in the years when they were building something together, and she had found it effective then. She found it entirely readable now. She was in the corridor adjacent to the east wing, setting a tray near the service entrance, when she heard the footsteps behind her. She didn't turn immediately. She finished what she was doing, unhurried, deliberate, and then she turned, and Soo-jin was standing 4 feet away in the corridor, alone, champagne glass in hand, wearing the expression of a woman who has come to a decision she is not entirely comfortable with and has made it anyway. The corridor was quiet. The sounds of the gathering were muffled here, reduced to a low ambient warmth that made the space feel more private than it was. Soo-jin looked at her without speaking for a moment. When she did speak, her voice was perfectly controlled. "Have we met before?" Zara took her time with the answer, not to be difficult, but because the question deserved a considered response. "Would you like us to have?" she said. Something moved behind Soo-jin's eyes, a door opening and immediately closing. She looked down at her champagne glass, then back up. "You've been watching the room all evening," she said. "The way you move through it. That's not something catering staff do." "I like to make sure everything is in order," Zara said. "Everything," Soo-jin repeated. The word sat between them with more weight than it should have carried, and they both felt it, and neither acknowledged it directly, which was its own kind of acknowledgement. Soo-jin held her gaze for another moment. Something in her face tightened almost imperceptibly. A woman arriving at a calculation she doesn't like the result of. And then she straightened, and her voice returned to its social register. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," she said, and she turned and walked back toward the gathering. Zara watched her go. She had spoken to the catering company. Zara knew this with certainty, because she had arranged her own placement through a contact who owed her a favor, and whose name appeared nowhere on the official staff list, which meant that if Soo-jin had checked, she had found exactly what Zara intended her to find. A gap, a question that didn't answer itself, a reason to come back. She picked up the empty tray and returned to work. The sitting room had thinned by 9:30. The older guests had begun their departures, at the evening loosening into its final hour. Tae-yang was still at the center of it, still performing, still wearing that particular warmth that was his most effective tool, and that she had once, in a moment of honesty she had never repeated to anyone, described in her journal as the most expensive thing about him, because it cost him nothing and purchased everything. He had not looked at her since the moment by the drinks table. She was furniture. She had made herself furniture, and she was aware that furniture has a way of becoming visible at inconvenient moments, and she was approaching one of those moments now. Soo-jin came back into the sitting room from the direction of the garden terrace. Zara tracked her entrance without moving her head. She was moving differently now, more deliberate, more contained. The social ease of the evening worn slightly thinner. She was making her way, with every appearance of casualness, toward the edge of the room where Zara was standing. Zara waited. Soo-jin stopped beside her. She faced the room, not Zara, the way people do when they need a conversation to look like nothing. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and entirely stripped of a performance. "I spoke to the catering company," she said. "You are not on their staff list." Zara said nothing. "I would like to know who you are," Soo-jin said, "and why you are in my house." 10 feet away, Tae-yang's voice carried over the ambient conversation, confident, warm, the sound of a man who has never once sat in a room uncertain of his welcome. Zara looked at his profile for a moment, the complete uncomplicated ease of him. Then she looked at Soo-jin. "Is there somewhere we can speak?" she said. Tae-yang's study announced itself immediately. His name on documents, his awards on the walls, his university credentials framed above the desk in a configuration that communicated to anyone who walked in that the person who worked here had decided long ago that legacy was something you curated rather than something that accumulated. Zara stood in the center of it and did not look at any of it. She had already seen it. Not this room exactly, but everything it represented. The careful monument of a career built on a foundation that included her and from which she had been cleanly, efficiently, completely removed. Soo-jin closed the door. The sounds of the gathering disappeared. She stood near the door for a moment, and then she crossed to the center of the room and faced Zara directly, and the social performance of the entire evening, the practiced grace, the hostess warmth, the management of appearances, dropped away with a precision that told Zara this woman was considerably more formidable than her public presentation suggested. "Tell me who you are," Soo-jin said, and Zara told her. not the way you tell a story to someone you trust, with the full texture of feeling woven through it. She told it the way you present evidence, clearly, in order. Her name, her full name, both of them, the way she said it in rooms where she needed to be taken seriously. Her background, the year she and Tae-yang had incorporated what would become his company. The original framework, she could reproduce it from memory, word for word, and because she had written it and had never once forgotten it, not in 7 years, not in any of the dark rooms she had passed through since. The nature of what he had done, not a romantic betrayal, not a personal failing, but a calculated, deliberate act of professional erasure. The manufactured paper trail, the rumors seeded carefully into the right professional circles. The meetings she had never been informed of, at which a signature that was not hers had been placed on documents that removed her from everything she had built. Soo-jin listened without interrupting. Her face did not perform shock. That told Zara what she needed to know. "You knew," Zara said. It was not an accusation. It was an observation stated simply the way you state a fact that both people in the room already possess. Soo-jin was quiet for a long moment. But outside, faintly, the remaining guests moved through the house like a tide beginning its slow recession. "I knew there was someone," she said finally. "I didn't ask for the details, because the details would have required a response." Soo-jin did not deny it. She looked toward the window, the dark garden beyond the glass, the lights of the estate reflecting faintly back. And the quality of her silence was not defensive. It was the silence of a woman doing a genuine internal accounting, totaling something she had been deferring for a long time. "What do you want?" she said. "I want you to understand what I am about to tell you before you decide anything." Zara's voice was even. "I have everything. The original documents from Lagos, time-stamped and authenticated. A forensic analysis of the forged signatures. I 2 witnesses who were present at the removal meeting and have given formal testimony. I do not need anything from you. I am going public in 72 hours, and that process is already in motion, and there is nothing in this room or in this house that changes it." Soo-jin turned from the window and looked at her directly. "Then why are you here?" she said. "Because he is going to protect himself," Zara said, "and the way he protects himself is by controlling what you know. He will tell the world you knew nothing. He will position you as an innocent party because an innocent wife generates sympathy, and sympathy is the one currency he is going to need more than any other when this breaks. He has been deciding what you know and don't know since the beginning, and he will keep doing it, including about this, unless you decide tonight that you are done allowing it." The room was very still. "I am giving you a choice," Zara said. "Not because I owe it to you. I don't. You chose not to ask the questions you already knew the answers to, and that is your accounting to make, not mine. But I am giving it to you because nobody gave me one. When they came for what I built, no one stood in a room and said, 'Here is what is happening. Here is what you can still do.' I was simply removed, and I decided a long time ago that I would not do that to someone else, even someone who looked away." Soo-jin stood very still. Something was moving behind her eyes that had nothing to do with social management, something older and more private. It's the specific expression of a woman who has been waiting for a version of this moment without knowing she was waiting for it. "What is the choice?" she said quietly. "You can stand beside him when this becomes public," Zara said. "Or you can stand on the correct side of it before it does. Those are the only 2 positions available. There is no third option where you remain outside of it because he will not permit that. He has never permitted it. You simply haven't needed to know that until now." She paused. "He will tell everyone you knew nothing," she said. "He has been saying that version of you for years. I thought you should hear what his protection sounds like before you decide whether to rely on it. The study was completely silent. Somewhere in the house, Tae-yang's voice, warm, carrying, certain of its own welcome. Zara moved toward the door. "Wait," Soo-jin said. Zara stopped. "He introduced you as the help." Soo-jin's voice was careful, deliberate, as though she was placing each word down with precision. "In front of everyone, tonight, and you just let him." "I needed to be in that room," Zara said. "I needed 40 minutes of his comfort. He is most himself when he believes he is the only person who understands what is happening." She paused. "He is very good at it. I used to find it useful." Something moved across Soo-jin's face that was, in different circumstances, the beginning of a complicated and reluctant kind of respect. "Go back to your guests," Zara said. "You have departures to see to." She opened the study door and stepped into the corridor and moved back toward the main hall, and she did not look back, and she did not rush, because there was nothing left to manage. Everything she had needed to do in this house she had done. What came next belonged to Soo-jin, and in 72 hours, what came after that would belong to the appropriate authorities, and the documents she had spent 3 years reconstructing from memory and courthouse records, and the quiet persistence of someone who had refused, at every point, to accept that what had been taken from her was gone. The main hall had thinned to its last guests. The formal architecture of the evening had dissolved into its final, looser hour. Coats being retrieved, goodbyes extended with the particular warmth that comes over a gathering when the performance is technically still running, but the curtain is already coming down. Tae-yang was near the entrance, hand on a departing guest's shoulder, laughing at something, entirely himself and entirely at ease in the room that bore his name and his stone and his framed credentials and the company he had built on a foundation he had not laid alone. Zara moved into the room. She did not move like catering staff. She had stopped doing that when she left the study, and she was aware of the precise quality of that shift. Not in anything dramatic, not in anything performed, but in the simple fact of how she was carrying herself. The posture of a woman who has finished waiting. One of Tae-yang's cousins noticed her first, tracking her movement across the room with the specific uncertainty of someone whose categories have stopped working. Then his mother, who had spent the entire evening looking through Zara with the ease of a woman who had never once been required to truly see the people serving her, glanced over and held. Tae-yang's guest made his departure. Tae-yang turned back to the room and saw her. The ease left his face. Not dramatically, not in any way the remaining guests would have named or caught. But it was there. That fraction of a second recalibration, the moment a very fast mind registers something that does not fit the model it has been operating from all evening. Then the ease returned, because it was a reflex for him, and he moved toward her with the expression of a host addressing a minor staffing confusion. "I think the evening is winding down," he said, his voice calibrated for her ears only. "You can start clearing." "I'm not here to clear," Zara said, yet her voice carried exactly as far as it needed to. Two of the remaining guests turned, the board-adjacent men from dinner, Tae-yang's mother still watching from across the room. His face did not change, but his stillness changed, acquired the particular quality of a man who is thinking very quickly and very carefully and has just understood that his margin for error has become extremely narrow. "I think there may be some confusion about—" "There isn't," Zara said. She turned slightly so that she was not speaking only to him, and she spoke with the specific quality of clarity that comes from having rehearsed nothing and needing to rehearse nothing, because what she was about to say was simply true, and had been true for 7 years, and would remain true regardless of what anyone in this room decided to do with it. "My name is Zara Appiah," she said. "I am the co-founder of what is currently known as Kang Capital Ventures, incorporated in Seoul in 2018. The original investment framework that became the company's founding document was written by me in Lagos in the summer of 2017 before this company had a name or a registration or a second person attached to it. I was removed from that company in 2021 through forged documentation and a coordinated effort to erase my professional involvement. I have spent 3 years reconstructing the evidence of what was done, and in 72 hours that evidence goes to the people whose job it is to act on it. The room was completely silent. Tae-yang introduced me as the catering staff tonight, she said, and I allowed it because I needed to be in this room and I needed him to be comfortable. He performs best when he believes he is the only person in the room who knows what is happening. She looked at him directly, and her voice did not warm or cool, but stayed exactly where it was. Level, clear, without theater. I am correcting the introduction now, since I understand one was given. Tae-yang said her name. Just her name. In a tone that compressed a question and a warning, and something that in a less controlled man might have been fear into 2 syllables. And it was the first time he had said her name aloud in 3 years, and it landed in the room with the full weight of everything it had been carrying. Then the door opened. Soo-jin had come back into the room. She was still in the ivory dress, still composed, still wearing the surface of the evening correctly. But she crossed the room with a deliberateness that had nothing of the hostess left in it, and she did not go to her husband's side. She stopped at a slight remove, not beside Zara, not beside Tae-yang, but positioned in the particular geography of a woman who has made a choice and is letting the room read it without needing to narrate it. Tae-yang looked at his wife. Soo-jin looked back at him with the expression of a woman who has been deciding something for a very long time and has just tonight finally finished. She did not speak. She didn't need to. The fact of where she was standing said everything the room needed to hear. Tae-yang looked between them, his wife and the woman he had spent 3 years erasing, both standing in his house, in his hall, in front of the people whose understanding of him was, then in the world he had constructed, worth more than almost anything else. And Zara watched his confidence shift in real time. Not collapse. He was not a man who collapsed, but it moved the way a foundation moves in the moment before something structural gives, and she could see that he felt it, and she allowed herself, very briefly and very privately, the satisfaction of watching a man who had built everything on her invisibility understand that she had never, not for a single moment, been invisible at all. She had simply been patient. She did not stay for what came after. She retrieved her coat from the entrance and stepped out of the Kang estate into the cool night, and she stood for a moment on the stone steps and let the quiet settle around her. The city sat beyond the estate walls, lit and indifferent and ongoing. Behind her, all through the closed doors, she could hear the muffled sound of a room reorganizing itself around a truth it had not been prepared for. In 72 hours, the documentation would reach the appropriate people, and the process she had built over 3 years would begin doing what it was built to do. Whatever Soo-jin decided in the hours and days ahead would shape the aftermath. But Zara had not come here tonight because she needed Soo-jin's help. She had come because she believed, and this was perhaps the most private thing she carried, the belief that had survived everything deployed against it, that people deserved to make real choices, not managed ones, not the choices powerful people made for them in rooms they were never invited into, real ones with full information, eyes open. She had given Soo-jin that. And what Soo-jin did with it was Soo-jin's. Zara walked to her car and got in and sat in the silence for a moment. The estate was lit behind her, warm and enormous, and entirely certain of itself. She had been certain of things, too, once, in a way that felt permanent. Then she had learned that certainty was not something you were given. It was something you rebuilt, carefully, on your own terms, from whatever you had left after someone tried to take everything. She had left that office in Lagos with the original documents in a hard drive in her bag, a decision she had made at the last moment, not knowing then how important it would become, only knowing that she had built something real and that real things deserved to be kept. 3 years she had spent turning that hard drive into what it had become tonight. 3 years of patience and precision and the specific discipline of a woman who had decided, somewhere in a parking garage on a night she did not like to think about, that she was going to finish this cleanly or not at all. She had finished it cleanly. She started the car and pulled away from the Kang estate and did not look back, and the gate closed behind her, and she drove into the city with the particular quality of calm that comes not from resolution exactly, but from completion. The feeling of having done a difficult thing on your own terms, in your own time, without rage, without performance, without becoming, in the process of pursuing justice, something you would later need to apologize for. Her name was Zara Appiah. She had built something real, and tonight, for the first time in 3 years, everyone in that room knew it. If you made it here, you already understand why she waited. She didn't wait because she was afraid. She didn't wait because she lacked options. She waited because she understood something Tae-yang never did, that the most powerful position in any room is the one nobody is watching. If this story sat with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and come back next week because the next story is already waiting for you.